Hi everyone, this is John Sneisen from the Economic Truth Report, and today it's report number 37. We have a very special treat, one of my favorite guys out there, one of my good friends, David Morgan from the Morgan Report, David. And, I don't think I really need to introduce you. I introduced you a few times on my show, but, I would say you're probably one of the most foremost experts on, of course, on silver, but not only that, but you're an extremely insightful person when it comes to geopolitics and especially looking at the future aspect of world governance and geopolitics and where we're at. So I highly regard your thoughts and your beliefs and especially you've been around a lot of amazing people in your life, so you get a lot of good insights. So I really appreciate you coming on, David, and looking forward to us having a great conversation here.
Well, me too, John. Thanks for the accolades. I appreciate it. Hope I can live up to them.
Well, I'm pretty sure you will. It's always great chatting with you. It's been a while since I've seen you in person, but I hope to get that done soon as well. See you at one of the events, many events that David speaks at. So, Dave, there's so much that have been happening, and it seems like a lot of people have relaxed, or the people were very scared, about the elections in the United States. Like big thing. Let's start with that. The election and. Everybody was scared that, the Biden administration was going to continue and, but now you got the savior, Donald Trump coming in. I'd be very curious to have your perspective on because I think we have a bit of a similar perspective on, any politician out there, any person that tries to run for office, and I'd love, what's your thoughts on what have happened in U.S. politics since it's been over a year I think since we spoke last, and there's been a lot of things unraveling, let's say, but will it be as good as they think it will? For people, I know people are desperate. We're seeing it all over the world. It's basically everywhere. The kind of a depressed, silent depression, right? And so, do you think it's going to be, as good as people think it might be? The whole Trump presidency when it starts, or if it starts, or what do you know? What do you think will happen here in the next few? Well, it's about it's actually under a month now.
Yeah, well, in a word, no. I'm not very favorable to the political class, no matter which stripe
Yeah.
they wear. But I want to go back, look, take, it's kind of a popular meme is a 30,000-foot view. And if you look at, the way I grew up, and I know I'm a generation ahead of you, but, the cartoons, you had Mighty Mouse and you had all these cartoons where there was a hero. And, no matter what went wrong at the end of the cartoon, the hero came in and saved the day. And you get this, what we call conditioning or programming that, there's someone other than you that can solve your problems for you because they're a superhero or whatever. And this beam goes from, the cartoon world to the comic book world to the Hollywood genres and all the way through. So people, might answer the question, do you think for yourself or whatever, or have you been even as deep as mind control? And of course, they'll answer, no way. I have free will. I think things through. No one can control me. But the facts are, yes, you've been conditioned from the time you were a child in the Western cultures anyway, that there's what I call the big daddy syndrome. So I think Trump is probably the kind of the epiphany of a
Yeah.
big daddy syndrome that, all the things that are wrong in the political class will be righted by a guy that's really not a politician. He's a businessman. He knows how to work with restructuring debt. He knows how to get rid of the swamp. He knows how to put the country back on track. He can make America great again, and all these things that we hear over and over again. And yet, they're really just words until, it's a show me, don't tell me kind of a situation. So I do think that there will be a lot of what I call candy for the conservatives that they'll like. For example, with Vivek and Elon, they'll probably get a lot of AI into the government bureaucracy. And just kind of off the top of my head, John, you might go to what we call down here in most states the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles. They have different names, but you walk in, and right now, in most states, you get in line and stay in line, and then you finally, after 2 hours, get up to the window, and the gal shuts the window and says, "I'm on a break," and you have to wait for 15 more
Yeah.
minutes, and give me your ID, and you try to renew your license, and you might have to take a test and all this stuff. The whole thing could take a couple of hours, 3 hours. Well, in the AI world, that's not true. You walk in, there probably will be one person in the whole room and a bunch of kiosks. You'll walk up to the kiosk and they'll scan your face. And they'll say, "Hello, John. We notice you have a perfect driving record. You had no accidents, no tickets. We're going to reissue your new driver's license. Just put your thumbprint right here. Thank you, John. Have a great day." And it spits it out, and there you go. Well, now what used to take you 2 hours takes you, 5 minutes or less. And you walk out of there feeling, geez, this technology is pretty cool, man. We got rid of a bunch of people that, were on my dime as a taxpayer. And now this machine does it. Does it take a coffee break? It sounded pretty polite. No, no, no. And that's just kind of a metaphor for some of the quote unquote good that could come out of the restructuring of the very voluminous federal bureaucracy. However, you got to go beneath the covers. Of course, you and I do that. And really, what I think the big goal is the new structure for control, which means a digital ID. And if you got a digital ID, as far as I'm concerned, that puts you into the new banking system once it's reset. And without the digital ID, you're probably on your own. And very few people these days are able to make a decent life on their own. I mean, the Amish do it in their communities, and there's some, homesteaders out there, but they're one in a million. I don't know, but it's very, very low population. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm not looking at the window dressing, I call it, and the niceties, and and some of that stuff's good. I mean, I won't deny it'd be nice to get cut through some of this red tape, but the bottom line is, what's the overall direction? And if it's more government control, not less. And the idea, and they're so smart, and I'll give it back to you in a moment, is they have the script for the conservatives and they have the script for the liberals. And the script for the conservatives, geez, we got to get rid of all these illegal aliens that came into our country. We got to ID them properly and get rid of them, send them back from where they came. And with the digital ID, we'll be able to tell if they came back into the country or not. So the conservatives all of a sudden are buying into this idea of a digital ID. And of course, the other side, they might be, well, you need a digital ID to get a welfare benefit or food stamps or whatever, and make sure that you're on the up and up or what have you. So really, the basically the political class, and of course, the banking class is above the political class. If you ever listen to any of my long interviews, but so the bankers and politicians pretty much joined at the hip. Let's get the new system in. Let's make it appeal to everybody, both sides, and away we go. So that's my big picture, John. I'm not very happy with the direction that our country's going. Again, you can have a great looking cake with a lot of icing on the top, but underneath it's covering something that's not so delicious. And I think that's what we have.
Yeah, I wonder if they, you're trying to figure out if they understand what's going on with the economy. They're talking about the deficit, they're talking about paying down the debt. What they don't understand is that you can't pay down the debt. Like you can, like make less debt. You need more debt to keep the system functioning. And if you start paying down debt, now there's going to be less and less of that currency in circulation for people. And so it might sound like a great idea to pay down the debt in the, in the grand scheme of things, but you got to understand the structural, like how the system it's built. It's built like a Ponzi scheme. And so
It
when you
is.
take away, the creation of the fuel for the payment of the world and the reserves of the whole world, basically, you got to remember, like when you get a treasury note, that treasury note, I found out, I was digging very hard and deep, and I found out that, right now, as of right now, a treasury note, let's say a 5 year, is leveraged 70 times through
Yeah.
the euro dollar system. So basically, they take it, it's a note, a liability to, the government, you get paid interest on it. but then they take and hypothecate and reclaim it, so many times through that whole system. And so there's, 70 different entities having a claim to something. That sounds similar, doesn't it? We've seen this in gold and silver, of course, with, the ETF system, the shares and mutual funds and all that fun stuff. And now, of course, everybody was so rah-rah about Bitcoin, like Bitcoin ETFs, Bitcoin. I'm like, guys, you know what's happening? So it's exactly the same game plan that these banksters have been taking, and so it's a good view though on the move towards a digital ID, because we got to understand, Elon Musk, he's a very, very smart individual, but he also loves the digital world. And so, efficiency, that sounds fantastic, like, and it is efficient. Don't get me wrong, like a digital ID, to in the current system, I want to be left alone. I don't want to be a part of a system like that. But, in a governmental system like that, it's very easy, like, oh, things are going to be easy, just walk through the airport, don't have to flip out your passport anymore. It's great, Um, but what if you then become like, I had a speech, I think it was in 2018? No, 19. I had a speech at the Red. I think, yeah, you were at the same Red Pill Expo, David, where I went on. No, yeah, it was it. I think it was. Anyways, uh, I was talking about, I told a story about the future where the UN is taking over everything, and basically they have a digital ID base of everybody, and a scoring system, based upon ESGs. And so it was a wonderful world where, like, things were convenient. I walked around, I did things, and it sounded like pretty good, to begin with. But then suddenly, I bumped into a Theodore Griffin type of person, that had a little bit of different idea about what was going on. And, since I actually was just around him, suddenly my score just started moving. And that actually is, I was not even making that up. Like, that is exactly what has been going on in China. Even in 2019, these bastards had that in place already. And what I found out recently, and this goes to, your whole digital, like where the United States and the world is moving. At the UN, I was at a UN webinar recently. And at the webinar, there was a prominent, like, some of my friends on LinkedIn, I found are high up in, credit rating in the United States. Like, they worked at Moody's and at high positions there. And so they post a lot of interesting stuff. And so one time they posted this, an invitation to a webinar by the UN in regards to combining ESGs and the modern day credit scoring into the system. And so they basically were saying, when you look at things, like the US wouldn't have such a good score if you actually implemented all the ESGs into it. They would not be doing as well. So, you might not get as much money in the current system. If you actually don't follow, the if you have some dirty oil, that you're pumping out of the ground, that's not good. They gotta get rid of that, and just basically follow the agenda towards their communist dream, which, it was created back in the 1980s by Gro Harlem Brundtland and Maurice Strong. And so Gro Harlem Brundtland was a former Norwegian prime minister of the Labour Party in Norway. And she had a great document called Our Common Future. And that document, actually, I found out a banker friend of mine from one of the top banks there. He went to Ivy League school, and he was like, John, you know that Gro Harlem Brundtland that you're talking about? Well, we had to read Our Common Future at school. He was telling me. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. So that is actually Our Common Future is the basis on what's called Agenda 2030. And then I think they changed the name just recently, didn't they? Because it seems like they're getting to a point and then they get exposed and then they got to tweak their, branding again. So I think they recently, I forgot what they called it, but anyways, they went towards that. So I think, like, even if you have guys like Elon Musk, like saying that, oh, I'm a libertarian, like I care about individual liberty and so on. I think it's he has some worrisome projects that he's, fooling around with, like Neuralink and X. He's been talking about making X the app, as WeChat is in China, right? Like he's, fondly been talking about that, how great, it would be to just have everything at one spot. It's convenience. And so I think convenience could be detrimental to people. And that could be the trap because they've been lured into this
Hmm.
lull of these figures. And of course, the father figure of Trump, but then also, this guy that's, fighting the establishment, the meme master, like he's an epic, kind of troll online. He's very good at it. Like he's
Yeah.
extremely good at the marketing and everything that he does.
Right.
And so, it sounds very good on the front side.
Hmm.
But there was an interesting thing there. There are the, Department of Government Efficiency. It's like an advisory board that they're creating with Elon and Vivek Ramaswamy. But I recently saw Elon posting that they're adding Ron Paul. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that one I'll get to. I just want to circle
Yeah.
back to Elon
Mhm.
because you go back to the 30s, the Great Depression, there was a lot of the populace that was questioning, capitalism, socialism, communism. And there was a startup in Canada called Technocracy.
Mhm.
And if you look up Technocracy, you'll find out that Elon Musk's grandfather was the head the head guy in Technocracy in Canada. Now, Technocracy was politicians aren't smart enough to get a social engineering situation that's beneficial to all or structured the way it should be, or those ideas, the
Yep.
best human experience. Technocracy is, and we're going to use scientists and engineers, and scientists and engineers are going to come up with more or less a resource-based economy. And that's really what Musk is. He's a technocrat. And don't ever forget that, because as smart as he is, he's got the Neuralink, he's got Space X, he's got X, he's
Yeah,
got all these
Starlink.
things.
Yeah.
And whether or not he's a true libertarian or not, I don't know. I don't know the man. What I do know is that if you get behind the propaganda machine for Bill Gates and just listen to what the mainstream propaganda says about Gates, he's a philanthropist. I mean, he's out there doing good everywhere. Well, I know better than that because I dig a little deeper than the surface. I scratch it a few times. And I think it's similar with Musk. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm just saying what he is. And I can make a strong case he's a technocrat. So this is, again, going to look good, as I said earlier, to the conservatives. But coming with Ron Paul, that's a one off. And I have to admit, Trump is somewhat of an enigma. I mean, he hires people that don't make any sense. As far as I'm concerned, they're deeply part of the swamp. But
Yeah. A
then
lot
if
of, yeah.
you're open minded, I'll say I'm open minded. I am, I'm not perfect. I've been on the, critical thinking list for a very long time. So you have to, or I'll ask myself, well, wait a minute. Is he doing it deliberately? Friends are near, enemies are closer, and he's going to out him later on in the administration and fire him after he's exposed them. I mean, I don't know, but these are kind of thoughts that I have, John,
Yep.
that, but I overall, my take is, and this may upset some of our listeners with our channels, I doubt it. And this sounds rather morbid, but listen, if they, meaning the deep state, wanted Trump gone, he'd be gone. I mean, I know a lot of people think this shot that was taken and scraped his ear was legit. Sure looks like it, but I have my doubts. And they've got heart attack machines. They've got audio frequencies that can screw with you. They've got all kinds of things that they want you out. You're going to be out. I think there's a fight at the top geopolitically for one side has gone too far in, child trafficking, for an example, and
Yep.
the other side of the top doesn't want that or wants to mitigate it or whatever. But, it's a Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution. Now, back to Ron Paul. That's a one off, John. I don't
Yeah.
know. I like to think that, that Trump's thrown a wrench into the gears. You got two technocrats and you got a true libertarian. And
Yeah.
and how's that going to grind together? And the answer is I don't know. What I do know about Ron Paul, I've only had dinner with him once, not one on one. It was in a group setting. It was the Austrian group, but I did get to sit across from him and talk to him more or less one on one. I know he's got a great heart. I know he's probably the most honest politician we've had in
Yeah.
this country
Yeah.
in years. But nonetheless, I will have to say that he does give in slightly to some political pressure. I know I would. I mean, I don't think I would have nearly, and I feel I have a high integrity, but you get so much pressure when you're in DC. Would I be able to stand up and adhere to all my principles the whole time through? I don't know if I could or not. I really don't. He seems to have done a good job of that. So I don't know. I'm hopeful. I'll just say what my hope is that he really does question Vivek and Elon and puts it back to, what's the big catchphrase now? First principles. The first principle is, freedom. How do we attain freedom? If you get the AI scan from the driver's license, is that increasing or decreasing your freedom? Those kind of things. So I'm hopeful that there's some pushback there, but honestly, that was one where I had to go. Trump is a bit of an enigma. I can't answer that question. What do you
No.
think?
No, it's a very tough one actually. Like now, and he was very, of course, a very different approach than the other side, where barely there was any, covering of their real thoughts or anything. He went on many podcasts, he brought all the young guys in, going on 2 to 3 hour podcasts. That's, takes a little bit of, that's just not, politician wouldn't survive long on a podcast,
Right.
first of all.
Yeah.
But again, you're listening to him. He said that, I was screwed over and things were, I learned a lot, from my first presidency. So it's a sliver of hope there, that maybe he has learned. But then you see certain people again, that he keeps on hiring into posts. There's a big problem. You got a behemoth of a government institution in the United States, and so you built up such an insane what do you call institution that you have to pretty much like add some of these deep swamp monsters in there in order to run it. But I one thing that maybe we should talk about this as well as we're talking about the United States. But as you said, I'm up and down. I really want the best for the United States because it's the only beacon of hope that's left, really. Actually, there's one more, or well, I would say just one more, maybe not two more. El Salvador is a totalitarian
Uh,
regime. He wants freedom though, which is good, but it's still a dictatorship. So it's quite a different approach, down in El Salvador with Bukele. But I think I don't know. Like I have a feeling, that there's going to be some good things, but then I have the worries that you have that technology is here and technology is doing certain things. Technology has always made our life easier, and easier. And it's also enabled, the monetary system to keep on having the Ponzi scheme rolling because the more you can innovate, the easier it is. But, it's getting harder and harder, of course. But it seems like this AI thing is one of the last, hurrahs of the epic technological advancements that we've had into, I think this hopefully could be one of the last centralized attempts that they have. There's a lot of hype around it, but my friends that are involved in this stuff, and we're building this decentralized platform right now, and AI is going to be a portion of it, but being run at one point within our system decentrally. Um, but again, the guys are saying, John, AI is not very innovative per se. It's just very quick at finding out which word comes after the next. It's a predictive thing. And so, they said, the AIs that are out there today that are centrally controlled on all these platforms, and of course, ChatGPT itself, where you had Sam Altman, he went to Bilderberg, that is being used as a massive sink, for intelligence. they're asking all these questions and they're just eating it up, to us. Like I use it too, and but I understand, what it's there for. It's a massive intelligence, machine. It's perfect because people are just throwing their everything out there to it, and they think it's, just giving them very good information back, which is really good, by the way, sometimes. But then again, you ask, for example, where do you get your information from, ChatGPT? And then it starts, like, listen, oh, Wall Street Journal, I'm getting it from, these news channels. Like I actually asked it, I haggled it enough that it spit it out to me what its sources are. And like it becomes pretty apparent that, most of these things are centralized. So that's why, we're trying to build something decentralized that is, a way, because with technology, like the guns, with any technology that we've had throughout history, the government gets it first, oppresses the people, and then we free ourselves with the same technologies. And so it's quite interesting. So that will happen at one point, but the oppressive force that comes with this, and with I think with the technocratic kind of thoughts, and especially a lot of Bitcoin people have gotten, and they're very heavy into that technocratic belief,
Mhm.
where they believe that, oh, AI is going to do everything, and we're just going to get UBI, like you're getting to that point. And then Elon Musk himself has mentioned that as well. It's
Right.
not just centralized some altman. Is that like, well, we'll need UBI, like when we take everybody's jobs with AI, and not to mention, I think we forgot all of his robots, that he's building,
Yeah.
his army of robots. And I remember, seeing the first robots, like the Boston Dynamics dog. And in my
Yeah.
presentation, I remember one of my last kind of things in my little story that I made was that, there was a robot dog, coming out to get me at a rural place that I was hiding. And, it's they put weapons on these things. Like that's going to be a very terrible move, putting weapons and then having biometrics run them. Like now we could just send it out and it could find, any of us, using satellite uplinks, whatever they want, and then just be like, yeah, we're looking for this guy, like John or David, like take this guy out. They got suicide drones. It's just insane what's getting built now. And so, well, I guess the only way you could really fight it is by, using technology against itself in a way. Low tech works to a certain point, but when you have that kind of crazy technology around, I don't know what's going to protect yourself. But I kind of went on a tangent there.
Let
But
me
back, yeah,
interject.
sorry, please.
I want to interject because I want to lose a thought. I just listened. I think most of our listeners know who Cliff High is, and I've got a lot of time for Cliff. And just listened to one this morning before I started my chores. Anyway, he talked about using AI to determine whether you're telling the truth or not. And I think the title of his podcast was "The Government Can't Lie." And so what he said was that in the near future, you'll have an AI on your phone or whatever. And when you're watching your TV or the cop pulls you over or whatever authority figure you're up against, you flip on your AI and you ask it if this person's telling you the truth or not. And that's going back to what you said a moment ago,
Yeah,
where first the government gets it and then the people get it and they use it
yeah.
against the government or push back against, I don't know, even I'm trained to even think I can't speak freely, But yeah, you push back and use that tool against them.
Yeah,
And I thought, wow, that's brilliant. I hadn't thought of that. Cliff's pretty brainy.
yeah.
But I thought, geez,
But
that's
that's
great
like,
because
yeah, that's like,
it's just a signal that, and it doesn't know a lie from a truth. He says it knows, the vibratory
yeah,
frequency.
yeah.
And if you're lying, the vibration, the frequencies change or whatever. He didn't go into great detail, but I thought, brilliant, Cliff. That's the way to do it. You get pulled over and, ask, what do you arrested me for? Or am I under arrest? Uh, you know, it could be a very good tool to push
Yeah.
back that everyone will pretty much have at their disposal here rather quickly.
Yeah, and it could be run off of hopefully these decentralized structures that we could create. Because there's one thing if you could set it up on a server somewhere, but most likely, like even the freedom-based like social media out there is mostly like actually run off of Amazon, or like they're stored, on the evil platforms, clouds. And
Yeah.
so we're kind of like trying to like rip their heart out by, to basically just be like, hey, instead of, that computer or that phone you have, that could be a part of the network itself. Like you don't need, like, what you got to understand is today when you have a Windows or something like that, there's a little cloud icon. I have it shut off, but there's a little cloud icon on a computer. Most people don't understand that most of the stuff they save on their computers today or your phone does not stay on your phones or your
Goes to
computers.
the
It's
cloud.
it's at a data center that is controlled by some of these like Apple or Facebook or whatever evil entity you can come up with in today. So being able to then take it back and having it stored, it kind of it went from, like, I remember technology when I was young. It went from the terminal computers where, everybody in the office, they had a central server and then they had little screens with, keyboards on them. But actually, it was the server that, showed like had everything running on it. And so we're back to that point. We went from that. We then got our personal computers, which we stored stuff on for, a decade, 2 decades, maybe. And then suddenly now we're back again, to where we're giving up every control. And it's 10 times worse now because it's not like a little server at, a office. It's like all of our lives are
Yeah.
stored somewhere else, all of our
Yeah.
data or everything. And so if you can take that back and be like, hey, let's put it back on our things again. It's actually quite simple concept to, it's a little bit technical, but it's actually not as technical as we think it is, because it's basically just letting these devices have things back on them instead of letting these corporations control it in their system. So I think, things like that, technologically wise, we have to look at opportunities to use their technology against them. And every, as I said, throughout history, when new technologies, the printing press, that was a huge technology, right? And as well, that was, used first, against you, and then it was used, to really bring free speech to the platform. And then came the internet. The internet just took off. I remember the heyday of internet when Alex Jones and like when I
Yeah.
had, World Alternative Media with Josh, like, oh, we were like everywhere. Like people were reaching us. We were excited to spread the truth, and then of course comes, the other part of the cycle, that tries to then suppress it with newer technology again, and then, come back again. So it's like a constant fight, I believe, between, and then maybe not so much just good and evil, but, the people that want to control and the people that just want to be left alone. And it's just a constant cycle of life, I think, that we're built to want hierarchies, but not all of us are. And, probably a good 10-15% of the population that would, be pretty happy being left alone and just live their lives to their fullest and do great things. And so I think we'll always have people fighting that back, no matter, I guess you kind of worried about your kids, and I'm worried about my nephews. I don't have any kids myself, but, I think the cycle will always turn the other way again. There's no way that, you will have an oppressive government for eternity, I think, because it always will come to a breaking point. Look in the UK right now with Keir Starmer and his insane policies. He's trying to imprison people for what they say online. They're trying to do that now in Canada with a new bill that's trying to be pushed through, right? And I think you need to see the darkness before the light comes back on again. And we're just in, a portion of time, like the dark ages in Europe that hopefully won't last that long, but I think with technology now, these cycles are not as easy to make longer, like they were in the old days. I think like we're so interconnected. The internet is just gonna not go away. And so if you're able to put forward these technologies, I think like the cycle could turn a lot faster, at least, at a time. And we could get to, some portion of my life, like where I'm ending up towards, you're getting older as well. like I'm seeing, I still probably, I hopefully have another 40 to 50 years to live, and I look at what's coming. I'm gonna fight the hell, to stop, as much as I can of that, progress, and then hopefully turn it around. That brings us back to turn it around. And this would be a good conversation as well, before we get into some, your deep expertise in precious metals and commodities and so on. But I think we need to talk to about a little bit more about freedom. And I think, what's your thoughts, on Argentina? I know, one of my friends down there, Matthew Smith, and I know, Doug Casey's probably a good friend of you. He's down there. They're getting a little bit excited about the anarcho-capitalist down there. Now, it's interesting how, he's an anarcho-capitalist and then he's a Jewish man as well. So like he has like a very weird balance to himself, but the world is weird, like we got a lot of where we got our own thoughts and he should be allowed to do whatever he thinks, right? And but he's doing some things down there. I remember when I ran for politics in 2018, I was stupid enough to listen to political advisors, that comes out to your party, your new startup party, you got to learn that, the ropes and handles in politics. And it's like, John, you gotta water it down a bit, like you don't want to cut taxes in half. That's too much. Like let's not go with like 3%, VAT. How about you set it at 5 or 6, maybe go to 6. And of course, that strategy didn't work. It failed, and we got
Right.
sabotaged. We got kneecapped and just destroyed by these political hacks and elites that control the system. And so I think Milei did the right thing about speaking the truth. Talking about speaking the truth. If you probably listened to a few of his speeches, or when he was even campaigning, the words and names he used for these people, he wasn't very fond of them, and he let that, really come out in his language, David. So, what's your thoughts down in Argentina? And like, do you think, like, the 60 years of socialism, do you think the cycle is probably turned there, for better, maybe?
Yeah, well, before I answer that, I want to just add on to what you said about, these things are cyclical. I mean, you go to the Four Horsemen film, it's on my website, find it for free. And these things do cycle through. No tree grows to the moon. The pendulum does swing both ways. And as you said, I think the new generation has got enough fight in them to push back hard enough, long enough, strong enough to, move the political regime the other direction. Malaya has mixed feelings.
Yeah.
I love his speech. I love what he said to the at the WEF. But I'm not behind him 100%. The reason
No, no.
is that Whitney Webb, who's probably one of the best, I think the two best that I'm aware of are James Corbett and Whitney Webb. I'll shout out to both of them.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And she pointed out, and I can't name the names. My memory's great, but not perfect. But there were still like three bankers, New York City types, that were in the mix of Milei's cabinet. Now that does not prove he's not a true libertarian, but it does raise an eyebrow. So my feelings are, um, I want to believe that he's 100% there all the way. But in politics, there's compromises that probably, I don't know, have to be made. I'll say that. Maybe not. So I'm a little suspect of it based on information I got from her, one of her lectures about
Yeah.
him. But from from a objective as I can be standpoint of what he said. I mean, someone that gave that speech to the World Economic Forum had some real guts,
Yeah, that
because
takes
he
takes
chewed them up and down, and man, I was loving every minute of it. So I don't think that's a big act. It's so hard to know, John, in today's
yeah.
AI world and the deep fakes. I mean, my own webmaster did an experiment. He had the AI take my voice and it learned it in, I don't know, however long, half hour, 40 minutes. And then he had it read some ad copy. And geez, it sure sounded like me. And it wasn't me, it was AI
Yeah.
doing the voiceover.
Well,
So
that's
I'm
that's a
off
scary
track a
thing.
little bit, but my answer is mixed feelings. I'd say,
Yeah.
put on a scale 1 to 10, 10 is peg. He's it. He's going to make it right. He's going to do everything a libertarian would do. No, I think
Yeah.
it's maybe eight out of 10.
Yeah, no, it's at least there's some try there because I think it's just gotten so depressed down there. I have a collection of hyperinflated currencies, and
Yeah.
I got two of them from Argentina. Well, now in my book, actually, I have a book that I wrote. I think I uncovered 8 or 9 hyperinflations and currency resets, in recent 100 years history of Argentina.
Yeah, we
And
have a few in the
yeah,
Silver Manifesto. Sorry to interrupt, and I can't name them. Chris
yeah,
helped me research the book, but he did that part, and I remember looking. I had it like, I think we had like eight. It's like,
yeah, yeah.
like I said, within 100 years. Wait a minute, because you don't hear about it, because these countries go to a U.S. dollar.
Oh yeah, yeah.
60% of the currency that's printed is overseas. It's not within the U.S. So they
No, and yeah.
use greenbacks instead of pesos.
Oh yeah, and 100%. And then like they don't even use that anymore, right? Like a lot of these banks now they
Yep.
use what's called the euro dollars, which is basically just a ledger system. But it has a dollar at one point. That's the that's
Yeah,
the
at one point.
actual underlying, asset. But then it's just like replica. I met when I was at the last Red Pill Expo, I met a friend of David Webb. His name was Lars, and holy smokes, I'm telling you, this guy is like an insider, like a heavy insider, a top banker, in the world, and he was just, laying it out. He was like, like those royals, like where David Webb lives, by the way, it's all around, the wealthiest people in Sweden. And so
Yeah,
they were just telling me, it's like, listen, like these guys have no clue what's going on. You know who knows what's going on? It's the World Economic Forum, type of elite consultant people that are hanging around
yeah,
them and telling them, what is happening. Because like you have these guys like, David and him going and being like meeting with like he met with the king of Sweden, for example, and be like, hey, like, have you heard about this? Have you heard about that? Like, these guys are libertarian, you know, uh,
yeah,
and they were like, oh no, I never heard about this. What is this? Like they're in shock, when they hear
right.
libertarian ideas and so on. And I actually on LinkedIn, I bumped into so many of these elites people now that I gotten a little bit of a following there, and I'm trying to, just throw out some ideas, and they're in shock when they hear individualistic ideas about, that you have responsibility for yourself and so on. It's like, oh, this sounds a little bit good. You know, it's weird, but they've been going to these universities, they've been brain fed, certain information that
Yeah,
comes out of these World Economic Forum type elites. That through the like I have that Young Global Leader website, that you
right.
could search on, and it's those type of people, they're the ones that are running the world behind the scenes. And like everybody's like, oh, Trudeau's World Economic Forum guy, but I can't find him on the list. And I'm telling people, it's like, no, he's too stupid to be on that list. He was a
Yeah,
welfare, like he was a trust fund kid from his dad was the smart guy. you know he was
right.
Pierre Elliott Trudeau was a smart scumbag politician in the
Yeah,
day. The Trudeau is just a remnant, replica that has a whole bunch of money from his dad and his political hack friends. And so you got these, consultants and everybody around these elites, and they don't understand anything. They're too stupid. They have a whole bunch of money, but a lot of them don't know, anything. They just have had,
right.
been fed a, certain message. And so I think if you can get to some of these people, what people tend to think that, oh, all the elites are bad, and they're all conspiring. I don't think all of them are, to be honest with you. I think,
No, I
we're
agree
all
with you.
human
Yeah,
beings, and I think some of them could be convinced to, understand that we want a better world. And I think if we just put our ideas out there, that's all we can do, and try to, do it passionately and to enough people. And, slowly over time, there's going to be enough people that are going to follow it, and we can push it for, 20, 30 years, and have a good time during that time when it takes over as an ideology. And then, slowly we'll trickle back in again, and, you'll have the whole fight over again. But I think it's going to be quite exciting, to have this fight. I it, it, you know, a lot of people get into a dark place, and some people have. We've lost some people in the movement to suicide and so on. And I think it could get really, really dark inside of your head when you look at the potential future of these things. But what you got to understand is that we're all human beings, and maybe some people think that everybody, all these elites are aliens and they want to control us. But I don't know. I think that we're all probably, creations of some, huge entity out there, and or like we're collage of, just insane amount of, you know, trillions upon trillions of human beings out there, and whatever, creation it is. But I think we can, have a good time as long as we, live our lives to our fullest and try to be passionate. Well, try to find something that you're passionate about. I think, that's all you need to get taught in life, I think. And I think no matter what that is, if it's art or if it's what we do, information and understanding things, or if it's building things, it's the way to go in life. I just don't see any other way. Like this whole way of peasantry and everybody should just live on UBI, and it's all going to be taken over, and we're all going to live in this entity called the government controlling everything, and the big corporation are going to just run everything in our lives. So it's like, what is fun about that? Like
Yeah,
that might be fun for a few elites that get to sit on the top of the
sure.
pyramid,
Yeah.
but it definitely doesn't sound like fun to me.
No, well, this wasn't planned, but if I could interject,
Please.
I've written three books, and I decided not to do another book. I may do one later, I don't know. But I decided to do this documentary, and we just finished the filming of it. But the synopsis, it's if you want interested in looking at this, our viewers, it's at
Is that Yes, yes, I remember
silversunrise.tv.
you told me about
But
it.
I'll just read the synopsis because it feeds into what you
Please.
just said. So Silver Sunrise delves into the stress, fear, and control that money exerts over our lives. Despite its essential role in society, many feel enslaved by money. Silver Sunrise explores the emotional and mental toll, questioning why money drives everything from love affairs and conflicts to the fall and rise of empires. Taking us on a trip down the love hate lane, Silver Sunrise traces the evolution of money from tribal sharing to gold and silver, from paper and debt to electrons and central bank digital currencies proposed by the latest crop of monetary scientists. Silver Sunrise sheds light on the manipulation of money by governments and banking cartels hell bent on exploiting civilization with endless debt, perpetual wars, and unjust enrichment. By better understanding monetary systems and how they are corrupted, Silver Sunrise enables one to postulate a new, brighter future, one without the overwhelming stress, fear, and control associated with money. So that really came from, my brain and others that are helping me. But the last chapter in this Silver Manifesto is Beyond Silver. And I started to question, do we even need money? Which is a big statement, but money's used as a control mechanism. And so this film questions a lot of what I read, but also the energy equation. Like if we had 0 point energy as a thought experiment, I mean, I'm an engineer. I'm not supposed to even believe in that, but I'm too open minded to say that I know
Of
for a
course.
fact.
Yeah.
And, but that's what really runs the energy. People say money runs the world, but money makes the world go round, but really it's energy that makes the world go
Oh,
round. If
100%.
we had unlimited energy, it wouldn't matter how much it costs to desalinize salt water, pump it into the middle of Africa and make it the most lush garden paradise that ever existed on the planet. I mean, you could do so many things
Yeah.
if people had access to free energy or very, very low cost energy. And so anyway, I attacked that and a few other things, but I just want to get that out there because, and this is a bit on the woo side, but looking at the metaphysical side of things that I have for years, I don't very often discuss it, but the frequency of the heart is much more powerful than we do in our brain. And I think this is kind of a problem in the educational system. We're taught left brain, right brain, and you kind of get this divide. And the power elite, basically, the way I understand it, is they feed whatever side you're on, your emotional side or your your logic side. And so that's why you get fed certain algorithms when you're on YouTube channels and you're getting revivified on your belief system over and over again. And
Yeah.
then you see something that you and I might look at and they say, that this doesn't make any sense. And we're fed stuff that revivifies our belief
Oh yeah,
system.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it keeps the divide going where you really want a holistic human being. You want both sides working together. And really, that plays into the heart as far as I'm concerned, meaning what you said about passion. To me, that resonates with your whole being. I just finished my speech in New Orleans, and one of the guys I just hired said, geez, David seems to have more passion, when he speaks than, some of the other speakers. And that's his perception, take it or leave it. But the point being that we need to take a step back and reevaluate what really has value because we're in a situation that's always led to revolutions. And that's where there's huge disparity between the haves and the have
Yeah.
nots. And when it gets so bad, then the revolution breaks out. Whereas the great experiment in the United States was we're all equal. At least we're all equal under the law. So I have the same rules, laws, and accountability for me or the senator. I mean, if a senator gets a drunk driving, his punishment is the same as if I get a drunk driving. There's no partisanship. There's no buying your way out of it. Well, that's all corrupt now.
Yeah.
If you're somebody of means, you're gonna, look. You know what I'm saying. So the movie is about making people think and coming back to what we need versus um, what we don't need. And one real small clip that's in it or should be in it is a movie called I Am. You can look it up on the web, and it's about the guy that was the director for some of Jim Carrey's early movies. And he's a multi-millionaire, has the huge mansion and the private jet and all this stuff. And he's there in his newest one, and he's just feeling so lonely and so unfulfilled. Yeah, he's got, by our standards, everything that you would ever want and should be happy as all get out. And he's not. And he starts questioning what's really meaningful in life. And he goes through this whole study, and he determined that in the 1930s, when we had the Great Depression, that there were some very wealthy people still. And most of the public, general public, thought that people that had that kind of opulent wealth and had to display it all the time were mentally ill. And you don't get that today. It's, oh, I want to be like Elon. I want to be like Bezos. I want to be a billionaire. Give me the latest crypto. I got to get rich fast. And it's this kind of greed that you see at the end of all these great inflations where people are really, it's run on fear. It's the idea of lack. I don't have
Yeah.
enough. And going back to the documentary, so maybe you are enough. Maybe there is enough. Maybe we're in an abundant universe. Maybe we aren't in a scarcity universe. Maybe we do, we just have to allocate things and hopefully not by a centralized authority, but on our own volition on a voluntary basis where, there's enough for everybody and live with that kind of an attitude instead of dog eat dog, survival of the fittest. There isn't enough for everybody. If I don't get mine, you don't. And so it turns that whole thing, John, upside down. I hope it resonates with a lot of people because if we taught our kids going into school that in and of themselves are priceless,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, they don't need to earn a dime to be of value. And these kind of principles that I believe in, I'm not saying I got it all together, but certainly looking at this most of my life, because there's a tie between the monetary control that we're taught and self-esteem in a way. Or, you look at what's the biggest driver in divorce. A lot of times it's financial.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, there's so many things tied to money where the manipulators have got, the puppet strings going and people don't even realize it. They just are in fear. And I probably talked too long, but it's very passionate for me, John. It's a different way to get the message across.
Oh yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to the feedback from it because if things go well, I'm hoping to maybe get a little sponsorship on the next one and maybe do sequences. And I'll be coming to people like you that I admire and have pretty good audiences for feedback. Like, you left this out, or I wish you would have talked more
Yeah.
about this, or did you think about that? Because I've never said I'm a know-it-all. You know me, John. I try to be a learn-it-all, but unless you get something out there, you don't have something to work with. We're going
Yeah.
to have a discussion. I'm going to tell you, hey, this is what I think about honest money. And you go, David, you've done a really good job, but you forgot this part. A gold only standard isn't as effective as a bimetallic standard. Oh, really? Tell me more. I got to learn more. I want to know
Yeah.
more. That kind of thing. So, again, I'm probably jibber jabbering a little more than
No, but
necessary, but I'm really wound up
yeah.
about it because a lot of time, effort, and money has gone into this for the greater good.
Yeah, no, that's all that it's about, to making the world a better place. And if you can put out some good ideas there, that's all it's needed. And back to, I think I got a few points here, what is happening. I think when you can decentralize something and give it the power back to people in different ways, they're trying to do that with money through different kind of
Yeah,
cryptocurrencies, but also gold and silver is decentralized type of money.
yeah,
Um, and then, they're trying to decentralize, what we're doing. We're trying to decentralize the internet itself. But here comes the next one that you just touched upon, decentralized energy itself. What if we can
yeah,
become energy independent? Because that's always been the biggest driver. Like it's not just money and debt creation. The
yeah,
debt creation came from the invention of being able to suck out oil and create energy out of it. That was the big boom that created the population boom that then created the insane, you know, amount of debt creation. And so, actually the energy itself is what sustain us. We're crying out loud. Like
yes,
we ourselves need energy. We need to be able to create well enough and healthy enough energy that we could live a well and good life in our bodies even. So like energy is everything, and energy is whatever we do, there's energy. Like when a transaction is made, there's energy happening there. When you just
yeah,
move around, you're spending energy in your body in kilojoules. So it's everything around you is energy. And you know I think if we can harness, energy itself, the abundance of creation that we could get together as humanity to create very exciting things that we could do. And this is what's cool about humanity. We seems to always reinvent things and create wonderful things throughout history. You go and look at old civilizations, they had their own greatnesses, that they were able to accomplish with their technologies. And look at like now, the problem is that there's a big stick in the cogs right now, and that cog is called government. And that is
yeah.
the big thing that impedes us from really, like, people's like, how is the world going to work if you govern yourself? Like, it's going to be panic everywhere. Nobody's going to know what to do. We need those guys on
Yeah,
top to
right.
tell us what to do. And so I think
Because
it's
we're
the
conditioned
opposite.
that way. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's
it
the
is.
opposite thing. And
Yeah,
like, think about the things that we could do. We and first of all, now we have technology to communicate with every single person on Earth that are able to then communicate back. And so, why would we need a central entity anymore? It's almost like a dying. Like, it's interesting throughout history. You have these different types of government structures that emerge throughout history, and the current like national state and the Westphalian like kind of system that we have today that it's based upon, it's been there. Do we really need that anymore? Like, do we really need those big behemoth entities to keep the peace or to fight the good fight? Like, people can do that themselves. They don't need the state legislative or anything. They like, why do you need those guys? Because we've been taught to become lazier, to give, and this happens through every cycle where you just give more and more power up. It starts with the small government, but then suddenly you end up with the government doing everything because it was so easy to give it all to the government. And then the problem is, as you give stuff to the government, the government is going to be like, oh, like, we're getting power here. How about we teach them more about, how great we are? So you just end up with a
yeah,
self-fulfilling
right.
prophecy of all this massive government that we just build into this insane behemoth of a system. And so I think the solution here is just to let it rip. And like, I think like the more we can put these ideas with decentralize and give more power back to individuals and for us to think for ourselves, I think we're going to see a new renaissance potentially. People say, oh, well, look at where technology is today. Well, think where we would have been if the government wasn't impeding everything, on a grand scale. They're impeding, certain treatments. They're impeding, they're creating monopolies. They're impeding competition, in most places today because they become so big. And then the corporations use the government to then control and impede. And so, I think we could get like 10 times further than we have today if we just let go of this old kind of dying idea of that we need a big government to take care of our lives for us to feel safe. Like the only way you feel safe is that your brain and you think that you're safe. It's not an entity out there that could make you safe. It's like police today. Like you think that the police is going to show up. What if somebody's there with a gun trying to steal you or kill you? Like it's just wait, I'll go call the police here. Like, come
Yeah,
on.
yeah. Hold that thought.
Yeah,
Let me get
yeah.
9/11 on. Yeah. Doesn't
No,
work
it's
that way.
yeah, no. So it's quite interesting. With I think a lot of our ideas, David, is gonna win eventually because it's I think they're probably not supreme, but there are in a way they give people the will back of, we're so depressed today. We're, like and we're kind of back towards like that depressionary kind of state that you were talking about, where people are like, I think we're at the latter stage of that wealth effect, that have been there with all this debt. And now we're starting to face to pay the piper about the whole system kind of maxing out. Like we indebted everyone. And who else are we getting in debt? Like there's nobody more, and we're actually
Yes.
decreasing in populations most places. And so, like, there's certain places that, oh, let's import these people from over here to here, but that's not going to help the whole system. It's still like the whole system is so indebted now that it doesn't matter where you move or shift people to. It's not going to really help anything anymore. And so it will implode, and they can try, all they want, but they need infinite money to be able to do all these sinister things. And so I think, what do you? Here's an idea though. What do you think if the government, well, like I guess the government could potentially get to some of those ideas, but they tried to suppress them though. With the talks of zero energy or anything that's really heavy energy dense stuff that's way better than what we have today. Uh, do you think that well, I guess the government already has though, being able to control, the mechanism so it's not getting out there to people. But do you think we can actually like get to the point where we could fully decentralize the energy supply itself because it's so centralized right
I
now?
would
And
I would love it. I mean,
yeah,
one that's not real woo is SMR, small modular reactors.
yeah,
And you
that's
could pump
interesting.
those things out like automobiles. They're one size for neighborhoods, one size for a mall structure. I
Yeah,
mean, one size for certain factories, and they're just such an easier way to go than these huge, nuclear power plants that
yeah,
usually run over budget by $2 or $3 billion, take 5 years longer to build and project. I mean, just a really smart way to do it. But it's they've got all this bureaucracy, the energy commissions and all this stuff and all the red tape and who's in control and what the state wants and it just goes on and on and on. But well, power back to the people. I know it sounds communist to say power to the people, but really that's what you want. You
yeah,
want voluntarism and you want it on up. And
yeah,
just to elaborate a little bit, John, I know you got something powerful to say, but if we had our own energy supply in our own neighborhood, we didn't have to worry about it. And I'm not against sharing cars kind of thing. I mean, I thought about that 'cause I'm, pretty liberal. I have it all figured out. I'm still questioning even the money question, which, I mean, God, I had it down when I was 35, man. It's sound money or nothing. Well, as I've progressed, it's gotten more and more questions about it. Anyway, there's a lot of waste in capitalism that doesn't have to be there. For example, my parents bought a washing machine when they got married, and it basically lasted their whole lives. Now you can buy the best washing machine made, and it's only good for about 5 years. We could build them to last your whole life. We just don't want to. We want planned obsolescence because the dollar is the mighty god of the times, and we've got to plan it so that we are able to get average household to buy 5 washers in their lifetime instead of one. Well, that's a waste of resources. But who wants to do one and not make as much profit? So I think there's things in even capitalism that we have to rethink. Anyway, I know you had something to say. I'll
Well,
give it back
yeah,
to you.
and that actually comes back to the monetary system itself. I wrote about this actually in 2015 in my book called The End of Freedom: How Our Monetary System Enslaves Us. And my point about that was that, the planned obsolescence really came to be because you have a corporate structure, and I think that is what it's coming down to in a major way as well, is the current
Yeah.
corporate structure with shares to pay dividends to investors or to ever hold those shares. Now, if you distort the value of currency that pays that dividend, well, the corporation's got to keep on, being able to pay that dividend to investors, and then if you create more of this money, they got to have to pay more dividends. And so, how do they get to pay more dividends? Well, they got to cut, costs, uh, or sell more things, so they can make a crappier product and then sell more of it to, be able to make more profit off of it. And same with food. They had to put garbage into the food to make it last longer, so they could sell more, and all this stuff. And that came from the inflationary pressure that the big corporations had to pay dividends. That is just a theory of mine, anyways. But they had to pay, still the same amount, to the investors that they have, and they are, of course, the structure of the corporation itself. You're adherent to your investors, to the shareholders. You got to do what they want, and they want the dividends because they want a pension, or whoever the owners are, wants that steady return, because the currency is losing value, so they need, either more or more, and then so you just get all this bad behavior. And it's interesting if you look at charts, from the decoupling, for example, from the gold standard that was, as an example. You got the decoupling. You have suddenly illnesses are starting to break out on a massive scale, and you got people are getting fatter, people are getting sicker, and so you got all of these things following each other as well. Now, of course, there's more people around, so there's more of it, but I think it comes down to what you use as an intermediary, right, to exchange value, and there's so many ways we could do it. And so you don't
Mm-hmm.
need that governmental monopoly one where you have a banking system that could create infinite amounts of it. That could be highly toxic, and shown many times to be toxic, right? And so how about you just let the people choose? That's one thing about Argentina is what Milei has said is like, hey, use Bitcoin, use dollar, use pesos, use gold, silver, use whatever you want, as a medium of exchange.
Yeah.
Remove those the control of the money from a monopoly, because that's a problem too. It's a monopoly, where you have, again, central
Yeah.
control in one entity. And so
Yeah.
so there's a few things that I touched upon that I think are, leading causes to, our misery that we let ourselves kind of into over time. And I don't know what your thoughts are on those things, but I think we probably have a little bit of similar thoughts on it. But I would love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I'll just say I agree in that. I mean, there's, I've not coined the term, but conscious capitalism. I mean, there's things that just make sense, and I'm pretty much as a more or less libertarian that against all kinds of regulation. But when I was getting my master's in finance, we had one class in international business, and I don't know if this is true anymore, but I read it in our book. But in Japan at the time, the CEO could only earn 8 times what the factory worker made. So there's a limit on the wealth creation that a CEO can make in Japan. Now, again, I don't know if that's even true today or not. But I like the idea, but I didn't like the idea. Because in free market capitalism, well, CEO should be able to earn whatever he want or whatever the market would give him. The problem uh, is it just gets this wealth discrepancy, which is an issue. And the other thing is, how do you profit? I mean, if you look at Amazon from the early days, and Bezos is getting richer and richer, but they weren't profitable for a very long time. I mean, even Elon Musk, which is kind of a sacred cow, I mean, he wouldn't have the profits in Tesla that he has. The reason he has all the profit is because he's a green company and he's subsidized.
Oh yeah.
That's not free market capital.
No, definitely
So
not.
there's a lot about free market capitalism that people blame on capitalism that isn't capitalism whatsoever at all. It's not
Yeah.
even close to it.
No, yeah.
So I'm sure, I mean, I know you pretty well. We've had some pretty deep talks, and yeah, I probably agree with most of what you said, but it's hard unless you understand um, at a deeper level than what most people are taught or get from the news bites, what's really going on in a true free economy, because there really isn't one very much. Now, I am for competing currencies. If you want to Bitcoin it or make up your own contract with your neighbors, hey, my labor's 1 hour of my labor is worth 1 hour of your labor, but somebody's a skilled cabinet maker. Well, you can make an agreement. I mean, your labor's worth 3 times what mine is, man. I can't make cabinets like you can.
Yeah.
And that's the division of labor, and that's why money works so good, because it allows everyone to be their maximum efficiency and produce more wealth for everybody. But anyway, I'm off on a bit of a tangent. But no, there's so many things that could be better than they are. And my fear is that the powers that be have this great idea of how they're going to move us into the new system. But what if they can't? And what if there is a moment of chaos where we are on our own? There's going to have to be some pretty strong leaders from the ground
Yeah.
up, not a political movement, but just a kind-hearted, big head and heart way. That, look, hey, we're in this together. You know how to grow food. I know how to, you know, bend metal. I know how to fix a car. You know how to, and
Yeah.
just work together. Will it get to that? I'll call it toward a Mad Max scenario where we truly are on our own, or are we so brainwashed that the UBI is going to come in place and everybody's going to just, suck their thumb and say, "Daddy's taking care of me. I don't have to worry about it."
I think there probably is going to be different response. The city state, like this is like election maps today, right? Like we're completely divided, into more individualistic type beliefs on the countrysides. And then in the cities, it's very collectivized, beliefs. And I think that's where all the green movement comes from, all the ideas that, oh, it's getting warmer and it's too many people. Like, yeah, it's because you're stuck in the city. If you live on the countryside, I grew up on the countryside as a kid. I never lived actually well, I lived 1 year in Winnipeg or in the big metropolitan city here. I just couldn't stand it. But it comes from those ideas, I think, that, either you grew up on more like a countryside type of setting where, you were, fair distance between people, or you actually grew up where, you were in the city crammed in, and then, like the whole like heat island with, oh, it's getting warmer, like, yeah, it's getting warmer because you have more concrete at one spot. It's, science, you guys, so you get that versus one great guy. I gotta give him a little bit of credit here because he passed away a few years ago, but Timothy Ball, I think you might have met him or known of him. But he was a great, climatologist and like climate historian, and he was like, they don't, he's a farm boy, grew up on a farm, and he's like, they don't have any measurements, outside of the cities mostly. There's very little of it, versus like the hundreds of points in the city. So of course, he says you're gonna get it hotter in the city, and if you ever been in a city, during summer, for example, here in Manitoba, like there's a 4 to 5 degree difference between the city and where I live. So, um, yeah, no, it's those ideas, and they come from, your upbringing, where you're at too as well, and then, add big government to it. Like it's mostly a popular thing in big cities. Smaller governments are popular on the countryside because we know how to take care of ourselves mostly, and we like to live more independent. And of course, if you're a farmer, you have your own things. Like you don't need, a whole system. And now, of course, they've been made more dependent, they've been indebted and so on. So they kind of destroying certain farmers a lot. But the whole ideas of that collectivism versus individualism, it's become pretty apparent to me, where it's like, the city states versus the rural. And that shows up in maps, not only in the United States. Canada is the same thing. Go to Europe, same damn thing. So it's pretty interesting to see that kind of like structure developing where there's a belief that like, well, we don't need a like this insane state, but then you're in the cities like, oh yeah, definitely we need this because look at like we got all this things here and infrastructure and stuff. So I think I don't know, it's hard to tell how you're going to change the minds and hearts of people in that live in big cities, because I constantly listen to radio, and it's big city radio. I love to listen to talk shows and hear the current thoughts and what people have, because at least they let people call in, and a lot of times they don't cut. At least the people that I listen to are more conservative, so they let people talk, and say a lot more things. And so you get more of a, and then you can go and talk to people, just talk to people. I think that is probably the best education I had. I never had a fancy economics education or anything, but just traveling around, meeting people, listening to people, it really gives you a very big perspective on life and how humans think and what they believe in. And then you travel to different countries, you get even a better, kind of look at it. And that's why, guys like Doug Casey is just an amazing thinker out there, traveled everywhere. So he kind of understands what's going on, when you get those perspectives, I think the best thing we could give to young people right now, and I don't know if you follow the experiment that Matthew Smith is doing with his son there. I don't know if you're familiar with that experiment, but he's just letting his son roam free, no college, no nothing, having life experiences, learning things, getting involved in things that he might be very uncomfortable with, trying to push, and then letting him just, go and travel a bit, like go and see things. I think we've been kind of like very overly wanting to control and make sure, we've been like I think the whole collective type of thinking that we brought upon ourselves is like, oh, it's so dangerous, things. So we need more of that, more of this. And then so it takes away from all the life experiences that you could have to truly become that individual that, would live a whole life and live a good life, because when you truly travel around the world, you hear so much evil around, right? Like all these thoughts and things. Yeah, there's, evil out there, of course, because there's people that can kill you and murder you. But when you travel around a lot and you listen to all of people around the world, most people are good, well-intentioned people that have love in their hearts, So I think there's hope, a lot of hope out there to, push good ideas out there and let people. I think if we could get to a point where people can start thinking for themselves again, that'd be a good starting point. And especially documentaries like you're doing and a few others that has been out there and are coming out, those are going to be the equivalent to life changing, I think, for the generations. And who needs to see them the most? It's actually the younger generation, because they have the greatest potential. The Gen Zs, and I
Right.
see some stuff. Who voted in Milei? It was Gen Z and millennials. So they were the ones
Yep.
that said like
Right.
enough is
No,
enough.
I really do think, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
No, I agree. I think I have a great deal of, I would say hope, faith, I guess, in the younger generation. There's a young man that's, oh, I don't know if I mentored him or not, but he's down studying with Lou Rockwell there in Mises Institute. And no, he's not. He went there for a while. He's in a Texas school. Sorry. Anyway, point being, he's very classically liberal minded, and he's just got some great ideas. And just because, and I've met a lot of younger people that just have very classically uh, humanitarian views. I mean, the word liberal doesn't mean today what it meant in classic terms, but I don't
oh
want
no,
to
yeah.
play semantics. Point being that I'm with you. I couldn't put my passport up against Casey's, but I'll tell you, mine was stamped quite heavily. And, some of the biggest surprises were first time visits. I went to Colombia to see the Marmato mining project. And when I got in the airport, there were guys with the automatic weapons, and
Yep.
it was everything I taught on the mainstream news. And when I got outside of the airport, it was the friendliest, most hospitable, warmest, most welcoming place I've probably ever been. Basically, the exact opposite of what I've been taught by the mainstream news. And so, wake up call after wake up call that I've experienced. And it does give you a different perspective, being
Yeah.
able to have the ability to travel around, which I have had. And just revivifying what you said. I mean, most people, especially in Mexico and South America, for the most part, there's always these one-offs. I mean, people are people, but the amount of care that they have for each other is undeniable versus, say, North America, U.S. and Canada. And if you're on the side of the road in Mexico, a random person will stop and try to help you. Where now it's like, well, they got a cell phone, they might have a gun on them, whatever. I mean, it's just not the kind of openness that you see. And I'm speaking in generalities. I'm making a broad brush statement here, but I've been there, I've seen it, I've done it.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just saying, yeah, the human spirit is unbelievable. And that's kind of one of the main thrusts of the Silver Sunrise, is that we have got the ability in and of ourselves, and we don't need Big Brother telling us what to do, how to think, how to talk, how to walk, how many calories you can eat, what our carbon footprint is, whether we got a good social score or not, and who our friends should be. I mean, that's
Nope.
all bullshit. We should be free to make our own choices as long as we adhere to two things. One, we do everything we say we're going to do. In other words, we live our word. And two, we don't infringe upon the rights or freedoms of anyone else. It's pretty simple when you get down
Oh
to
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Do
We
we
don't
really
need
need
thousands of laws. Yeah, no, 100%, David. It's it's so easy, the way that we believe that life could be is you just give so much more freedom back to people. You don't have to think everything you say or everything you do in a society that you're allowed to, as long as you don't, do anything bad to others, steal or murder from people. And like it's very simple, like it's like Ten Commandment kind of simple, in a way, the ways that libertarians think. And I think we need to get back to that simplicity. Why do you need these, like, all these professions making up new law? Like, when you listen to these politicians, it's just like a new law every day. It's like we're just passing a
no,
new law now here because there's been some machete attacks all the time. So now you got to have a registration and a ID when you go and buy machete if you want to use it somewhere. And so you get that just nannying state with the other side. And then I think with what we're trying to do is just basically be like, hey, we're still human beings, and we could I think we actually can do a lot more than the government is telling us that we could do. And I think we need to get out of that belief that oh, it's like all humans are evil. Like there's so much evil out there. It's like there's beyond math, how much better out there than there is evil, in my opinion. So that's
oh,
that's
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You just walk around in a foreign country, and it's very apparent to me in my travels and what I've been able to enjoy in my life that most people are good. Nothing will ever shake that belief, because
No.
it's not really a belief, it's experience, it's experiential knowledge,
Yeah.
through South America, through Europe, through Mongolia was a real experience, but most people are very giving. In fact, more so than North Americans. I mean, North Americans and some Europeans are more reserved,
Yeah.
they're more cautious, whatever. That's okay. I'm not trying to, and of course, as soon as you stereotype somebody, then you're evil already, because
Yeah, I got
you
come on.
can't stereotype.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Anyway,
Norwegians
I won't go
are
any further.
very easy to become friends with. No. Norway scores like it's funny. Norway scores as low as China on like the actual friendliness. So don't go to Norway if you want friendly
Yeah.
people. And it's no, there's good people in Norway, but no, it's I think yeah, I think we just need to get it past that thing where we're so afraid of the like I understand it's bad. You know, there's a lot of poverty around now, and there's a lot of crime because of the poverty that was caused by the monetary system and the governance system that we put in place. And we got to just stop like letting us believe that the same system that brought us to this place is going to fix it. And I think the sooner we can get out of that thought
I
pattern,
know.
I think we're going to bless ourselves quite well, you know, with our accomplishments after that. But until that time, you know, we just got to tell people that, you know, we believe in you. You know, there's a lot of potential in each and every one of us. And we believe that we don't need, you know, anybody else to tell us what to do. And everybody has the potential of being a smart, intelligent human being, pretty much every single one of us. So I think we just need to continue to come out with that message and then believe in the ideas of like that we can take care of ourselves, but you know, like by taking care of ourselves, we also take care of everybody else around us. So people are so afraid that, you know, it's, oh, everybody's going to think for themselves and, you know, it's going to be you against me. That's like, no, that's not human. You know, humanity over time, we built things together, you know, like everything that we've done has been
Yeah.
together on this planet. I mean, like, yeah, there's been individuals that have done a lot more than others, but so is life, you know, like we're all built differently. Like some have more motivation than others, and that's fine.
Yep.
You know, like let those that have
Sure.
great motivations do great things, and they deserve it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, you know, maybe we should do one thing before we go, and talk a little bit because you know we got David Morgan on there. Just talk briefly about you know what's your thoughts on you know precious metals right now and what do you think? Like we talked so much philosophical about things, so it's kind of like a little bit weird to end up on this, but I think it's a lot of people, you know, want to know where we're looking at, you know, with the new presidency that's happening and everything, and what's your thoughts on, you know, where we could end up with the value in currency, you know, of, for example, precious metals. Like where do you see that? Because I think it'd be good question to ask as well because it is a wealth protection against you know what's happening. So what's your thoughts? I know that you've probably been one of the most out there that you know been very kind of like you haven't been hyping it. Let's leave it at that because you're always like down to earth with you know what you think, and you've been quite close to you know a lot of your thoughts. So let's hear what David
Yeah.
thinks about you know what's going to happen to you know maybe into next year.
Yeah, well, does future-proof past or past-proof future? I don't know. What I do know is that the metrics under the Trump administration, gold did a higher percentage gain than it did in the Biden administration. So this thing about Trump got in and gold fell, that was kind of a knee-jerk reaction. But John, I think we're gold's gotten a bit ahead of itself. I think we need to consolidate. I think we're going to be in a wide trading range, maybe well into next year. I don't know for sure yet. I think the markets are what I call an indecision pattern, which is a trading range. You know, gold between I don't know, pick some numbers, 2,500 and 2,900 or something, U.S. dollar terms. Silver, a similar situation. So I'm not looking for a big move in 2025 initially. I think it will be work their way higher by the end of the year. And I was at the New Orleans Gold Shows, I've said a couple of times, and Avi Gilbert, who's a very strict Elliott Wave guy, he was looking for um, gold to have one more major leg up parabolic move. And he said it would go to about 3,600, and that'd be about it for a long time. I'm not saying I agree with him, but it gave me food for thought. And I'll throw it at you because you got a good economic head. And I thought, well, how could that be? Let's say he is right. What would have to occur for a 3,600 ultimate top? And my thoughts, and I need your feedback, were well, if you have got pushed up to 10, 11%, That takes a hell of a lot of value out of the bond market. If you had a real estate crisis and housing prices got cut in half and the stock market had a 50% haircut, $3,600 gold might look pretty powerful because it's not a number on the gold price. It's not how many units of paper against it. It's what's the value of it. And the value of gold is overvalued relative to historic means because an ounce now buys you more house than it has for the last 50 years, or buys you more stocks than it has in the last 25 years, or buys you a greater yield than it used to for the last 40 years. Then that's how you have to value it.
Yeah.
So 3,600 is really just a number. It's really what's the economy done. So that was my initial, I think, well thought analysis of how could that be. What do you say?
Yeah, no, I think like I haven't studied Elliott wave too closely, but I have a good friend of mine that's a huge Elliott wave fan, and I think as far as I know, it's a bit of like several technical analysis brought into
It's a lot.
one, right? So like it's
Yeah.
just a basically to just understand all the different trading patterns. And so I think actually
Right.
they are probably some of the closer to reality than all the other ones, probably, because
Yeah.
they understand all those cycles. So yeah, no, it's I don't think it could move too much, but again, there's a lot of pressure. So let's just quickly look to what's going on around the world, and I look at a lot of numbers. And so you've been looking at, the PMI numbers, for example, that are coming up, production numbers. They're in depression level, around the world mostly,
Right.
and they're in, that you got the level 50 is basically the zero, like that's the zero line, and there's, above it it's growth, below it's contraction, right? And so it's been below 50 in most places now for a long time, and it's actually now contracting again. You got Europe is in almost depression levels. I think depression level starts around 40, and you see in 40 to 30 in Germany, for example, is sitting very low there as well. And so you have a lot of deflationary pressures, let's say, around the world. You got the
Yeah.
Chinese problem, which is an insane problem. They got an insane amount of real estate. I think it was like somebody thought it was around 60 million units, that's been overbuilt. And, old China, I remember, back me and Josh talked about this, China is having such a great GDP, but, like it's mostly, all this real estate, fake buildings that they're building in cities and towns and, everywhere. And so, you could do that for a certain amount of time, but that's hurt them because they've gotten into so much debt. And now that, again, the Ponzi scheme itself, like it always comes down because you can't just keep on creating exorbitant amounts of debt and it would never stop. There will be a point, where you have to, like, where there's nobody else doing debt, and that's happened. The average investor there, they had like I think 2 to 3 houses. The, like it was pretty wild. Like probably the wildest property bubble in history. Now Canada is a big one, and a few other Western countries. But again, I think you might be right. Like and this comes back to what's his name? I have his book here. Demographics guy. You know him very well.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
anyways, Harry Dent, he
Very dense. Yeah,
it
yeah,
comes very well down to a lot of his principles. So, like the deflationary pressures of demographics. And we've seen that in all the Western countries have those pressures.
yeah,
And so, well, I think there's going to be twofold. I think, yeah, they're going to have those pressures, but then I think everybody's just going to panic. There's a lot of talk around now. How can we reform the banking system? I heard guys like, I don't know if you follow Jeff Snyder too much, but he's, trying to like find ways to reform banking.
a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah, and all this
yeah,
stuff. But I don't know, like given the idea to someone that they could just put on the ledger, money into existence. That's kind of an unfair thing for them to then be in control of everything. So I don't know how I
yeah,
like that or not, but I do think like right now we're in that kind of spot where the 3600, that's gonna be like kind of a struggle between the two forces here, where they're gonna desperately try to
right.
stimulate the economy while the economy is telling us to, like we're not surviving here, and people are going
We're
bankrupt. There's too much
contracting.
debt.
I've been
Yeah.
saying it for years.
Mm.
We've been contracting. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No, please.
people don't get it because they see a bigger number in the financial markets, and that means it's expanding. Money supply is expanding,
Yeah.
but the economy is contracting.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, it definitely is contracting, and there's a lot of upheaval because you financialize the economy. You can make money with money. Why do we need to do productive work? Why do I need
Yeah,
to build a car? Why do I need to go and be a carpenter when I could sit at home and then trade cryptocurrency or stocks?
exactly.
Like, why do we
We'll
need
all
to?
be rich.
Yeah, so like it's back to that. Like it's back to I remember, one of my favorite stories is from the French Revolution. No, was it the Revolution? Yeah, it was the French Revolution or the Mississippi bubble anyways. I think it was like similar time frames, but it's just like the funniest thing because during that time, it wasn't the Lamborghinis, that the Bitcoin guys, got the Lambos, that they got into. No, it was horse and buggies, and they had margin debt. They did margin debt back then too, So welcome to the reality of banking, and even in the first paper currency place in the world that created the first paper currency, the Sung Dynasty in China, they had a real estate bubble and they had a debt bubble. And so, like, hey, you know what? We've done this so many times. And I think, yeah, the deflationary pressures are just going to get, slowly stronger and stronger, especially in China. Just like insane deflationary pressures that are coming because of their one-child policy. So you know, I don't know. I think it's going to be quite interesting, anyways, with the upcoming year. I think you're going to see a big fight between deflation and inflation by the economy contracting still starting to contract, putting tariffs and stuff on things, it's I'm from Norway. Let me tell you what tariffs do to your economy. Norway's
Right.
heavy tariff, and Norway has lack of things all the time. Like now, of course, the United States is way, way more massive and more vaster and have a lot more resources than Norway. So it might work a lot better. But again, what we saw is just more prices, like higher prices, less competition, and so on. You can only hope that they will eradicate the government of DOGE guys, but you know if they don't, the United States is going to be a hell of a lot of trouble, a lot more than they were with Biden. Even though that Trump might try to cut some things, if they can't cut like one thing that Milei has done greatly over in Argentina is he's cut 60 to 70% of the government worker size. The GDP fell by 15% in Argentina because we calculate government as GDP. It shouldn't be in there, but
Right.
it is
Yeah.
a part of it. And of course, but now you're seeing slowly, things. But I think that drastic measures has to come. I think that whole slow thing, that people believe in, like, oh, gotta take it easy, like, no, we're at such a bad state already. It's time to rip the band-aid off, guys, and act like
Yeah.
men and women. You know,
Yeah.
let's get our
Yeah.
senses together and let things happen. And then I think it's going to be so much better to let it happen for the long term. It's going to hurt in the short term, but it's going to be so much better for the decades to come than if you let this keep on going. We're going to live in that world of Klaus Schwab where we own nothing, but we're not
Yeah.
going to be happy.
I agree. Yeah.
Anyways, I think that's the last for me. But if you want to finish us on a few thoughts, Dave, let's hear it, and then we'll call it a day.
No, I'm satisfied. It was always a pleasure to be with you, and we can call it quits and just keep me informed on your project with the decentralized internet because I definitely want to help you with it.
Yeah, I sure have my hearts and hopes towards that one. I'm gonna work my very best with our boys there to make that into fruition because what I've seen so far is very promising. I think it's a technology that could be life changing. It's one of those things that could really, like, we had blockchain. It was okay. Like some good things came with it, but with this, there's an actual real thing coming with it. There's not going to be just people making a whole bunch of money with money. We're actually rebuilding the internet itself and putting it in people's homes instead of it being, in control of a few hands. So I think those ideas might, benefit some people. So I really hope that we could build a better future with that, and at least, build portions of it, for the next 5 to 10 years, and then hopefully, over time, that you turn everybody around to that idea that you don't need these governments. Throw some of these devices into China or into Russia or North Korea or other places where there's a lot of oppression, and you can append them pretty quickly. So let's hope for the better here, and we'll stay in touch, Dave. I always love talking to you, but I really hope I can meet you in person soon. So it'll be good to have a real chat face to face again. It's been quite a while, so looking forward to it, and hopefully with this project I can make enough that I can be off my full-time job and be able to just travel around a bit and do some real things. So yeah, that's my hopes anyway. So very exciting. Is there any other, the morganreport.com? Is there any other places? Of course, what is the website for your Silver Rise again? It's
The
Silver Rise.
website's themorganreport.com. Yeah, I rebranded
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
And then my Twitter handle is at silverguru22. That's about the only place I do much social media.
Yeah.
So
And then with the silver, like your documentary, what's the address for it? Yeah,
silversunrise.tv.
perfect. Yeah, so please go and check that out. Like, is it available yet? Did you put it out yet?
No, but there's a
No.
lot of trailers.
Nice.
So you'll be able to see a lot of,
And people
you
can
know,
support it, right? Like they could
yep,
help
we
donate
could
money.
certainly use some donations. You bet.
Okay, very
Yeah.
good, very good. Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure, David, and we'll definitely talk soon again. I'm looking forward to it. So you have a great evening.
Well, thank you, John.